And as usual on Friday, we always do a recap. We always do a recap of things that have really happened all through the week. And so far, two very important issues stood out this week that just this past days of this week. And today being the last day of the week, which is a Friday, we'll just do a rundown on it and then see what can be deduced from the comments I will get from my commentators here with me in the studio. My name is Ernest Ekwere, and I'd like to welcome you to the radio campaign here on Television Nigeria. And I will always tell you, if you're watching us, don't be selfish. Share with others. Let them also know that the program, as interesting and educative as this, is going on Television Nigeria. Go to our Facebook page, like the page, and share. Don't forget to also drop your comments. And as you know, I don't do this alone. I always have gentlemen who will sit down with me in the studio and see how we can discuss Nigeria. On this program, it's all about Nigeria, 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 all the way. And with me today, I have this gentleman who goes on with the title. He says he is, in fact, he runs an association that is running the empowerment for unemployed youth. He's the convener and the chairman of Empowerment for Unemployed Youth. His name is the wise one, Solomon Andodo. It's good to have you on the program.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.
Welcome. And also my in-house analyst. This man is always on point when it comes to anything Nigerian, and he will always tell you as it is. Mr. Bennett Joshua, it's good to have you on the program.
Wonderful one again. Thank you.
Straight to the point, still on the matter. You run an agency or an NGO that empowers unemployed youths. Okay? Yesterday, speech from the president that youths are lazy. And there was this up, people were coming, some were for, some were against. Lo and behold, just when we thought everything was going to just go down naturally, and then maybe the presidency will come out and make some corrections or make some amendments, lo and behold, Femi Adesina now spoke and said that the people misread or misunderstood what the president said. That the president meant to say a lot of and not all of. And some people are of the school of what's the difference? Whether you say a lot of you to, whether you say all of you to, and you went out there to demarket Nigerian youth. Mr. Solomon, do you agree with this kind of thoughts?
Well, thank you very much. First, I must commend TV Nigeria for the novel approach to reportage and what you're doing here.
Thank you.
This is my first time in the studio.
You'll come on.
I'm very much impressed.
Thank you.
Now to the crux of the matter. I want to state it because we've been in forefront potentials for more than a decade. Yeah? And what I will always tell people, in fact, the former special advisor or assistant to the president on job creation once stated that Nigerian youths are unemployable. We had a running media battle for a period of time, and I told her that was a wrong assertion. On this one, I will also state categorically and not equivocally that Nigerian youth significantly are not lazy. In any society, you will find those who are not ready to work hard, those who are lazy, those who are waiting for handouts, everywhere you go. From breathing to the United States, that's why you have the homeless ones and so on and so forth. You have them anywhere. But I can tell you that Nigerian youths rank in the forefront of the most hardworking, the most innovative, the most inventive, and those that are ready to embrace opportunities as they come. So Nigerian youths, if you give them an opportunity, they'll be ready to embrace it. The greatest asset we have as a nation presently is our large youth potentials. What matters most is how we can harness these potentials, let this potential grow.
Giving that opportunity to the youth to really express themselves and show their full potential.
I will say clearly that there has been a disconnect. You see, I always quote a collection of essays whose title I read in my school library by F.S. Idachaba, Professor F.S. Idachaba, and the title of these essays is that good intentions are not enough. For those who have followed Mr. President all through, you will agree that Mr. President has good intentions for this area. But letting these intentions to actual actions and realities has not been met, then you now tell yourself there is a missing link. And that missing link, you see, there is supposed to be an office of the senior special advisor or special advisor or special assistant to the president on students and youth matters. There is supposed to be an office of the Minister of Youth and Sport Development. But let's talk about the Minister of Youth. There's supposed to be a ministry in charge of employment generation or employment monitoring, employment, labor, and all of those factors. How well have these bodies, amongst the several other agencies which we have, been able to relate with these youths, match their potentials, pick them, harness them, develop them, and refine them over time? If you ask yourself, for the nations that have developed so far, how come or how did they succeed in evolving over time? You have Japan that was struck by a nuclear bomb and atomic bomb. You have so many of the countries that were affected, but they rose from the rubble. You have China, who initially their large populace was like a burden, but they translated this. You have so many other countries, even in Africa. You have a country like Rwanda that rose from the rubbles of internal wranglings and fightings to become one of the cleanest cities in Africa, a model across the world. How did they manage to do this? They managed to do this by refining their potentials over time, by picking what they have, developing it bit by bit till they got to where they are today. And Nigeria cannot be an exception.
Let me go to Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, you've heard Mr. Solomon big points on salient points. Will you agree with some of the things he said?
Yeah, to a large extent, I do agree with. I'd like to talk about the president's remarks in London accusing Nigerian youth of being lazy. I think the president wasn't talking he wasn't generic. He wasn't talking on a broader perspective. You need to look at the president and, for instance, his appointment soon after he became president in 2015. His appointments were tailored towards the North. An indication that most of his understanding of Nigeria is tailored towards the North. So for the president to go out from Nigeria and say Nigerian youths, quote and unquote, are lazy, it gives me the impression that for those who have been to the North, perhaps he was referring to what is obtainable in the northern part of the country.
But he was speaking there as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes, he is
not the president of the North.
I agree with you. He is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And going by constitutional provisions, going by the tenets of the Federal Character Service, the president of Nigeria Sitwe ought to have given the Federal Character dimension, even in his appointment. So it's not a factor of what theoretically is obtainable as the president of Nigeria. It's a factor of what his mindset is, to start with. Then secondly, Nigerian youth, for what is worth, let's establish our fact. Nigerian youths aren't lazy. What we have is a situation where Nigerian youths have not been given the necessary opportunity to prove themselves. You have a government at the moment that cannot tell you in clear terms what its economic blueprints are. It's a pocket of, we want to do this, we are fighting corruption, we are building infrastructure, as lopsided as it is, and all whatnot. Give the Nigerian youth the opportunity to prove himself, and then watch him prove himself. Sadly, we've had the case where, even in recruitment, we've had the handpicking of square pegs for round holes. Now, obviously, this class of Nigerian youth will not prove themselves in given opportunities because they do not fit the paradigm for that opportunity. So before the president begins to make these kind of demarcating remarks, which I'm beginning to think that his advisors, I just hope he doesn't move off the script like the United States president.
Unfortunately, I don't think he was even speaking from a script, because the way that answer, it was an answer to a question, and it's surprising, and maybe that's why we have some of these issues. The president always makes some of these very presidential remarks to say when he's been asked questions. questions. It played out in Germany when somebody asked the question about the remark of the wife that the speech she gave on BBC and the interview she granted, and what she said that she would not support the husband. And instantly he answered offhandedly.
I think what they need to do, what his handlers need to do, is to find a way to get him to avoid questions. Sadly, he may not be able to do it all the time. It is always possible. He may not be able to do it all the time. Because like Mr. Solomon said earlier, there is still disconnect between who we have today as a president and the realities on ground. That's the challenge we are having. But back to the subject matter, it is important to point out to investors, would-be investors and subsisting investors in Nigeria, that the challenge we have about the Nigerian youth is the inability of successive governments to put formidable economic programs in place that will give them that opportunity to prove themselves. As for laziness, the whole world knows that Nigerian youth aren't lazy.
They're not lazy. But in the case of the president, who should be blamed for this?
Well, I want to pick it from a prism or perspective. You see, there is this story that was told about a butterfly. And in the evolving stage of a butterfly, it evolves from the egg, pupa, and so on and so forth. Those who are conversant with biology will tell you so much. Then at a point where it is changing from the chrysalis to the full-fledged butterfly, it struggles to come out of a cocoon or a shell or an enclosure. And as it is struggling, it is under pressure and so on. And it is that pressure that shapes the butterfly into that beautiful insect you see. Then you describe beauty in terms of a butterfly. Then there was this kid who tried to cut off that silky thread and ease the struggle of the butterfly. And he was advised by the elderly sage, told, leave the butterfly to struggle its struggle. For therein lies the beauty of the butterfly. Okay. For Nigerian youth, and we need to be told certain harsh or thirst truths, even if they are not entirely factual as they are, but be totally balanced, just like my brother here has stated that maybe the statements of Mr. President have been skewed towards the north and so on and so forth. But I will still state clearly that even the youth from the northern part of Nigeria are very hardworking. I've had very innovative colleagues, inventive colleagues, hardworking colleagues. In many
now a Chevrolet.
Good.
He's from Sokoto.
Today he is heading the National Automotive Council
yes.
in Abuja. Yeah. You understand? So we have a lot of them. Very innovative. I have some doctors, I have lawyers, I have all of them from the north. So Nigeria is a blessed country everywhere. But then there are challenges. You know, just like landmines pickling everywhere, you are cautious to tread. Because if you thread wrongly, you might explode. You understand? And so these are some of the factors that have limited that butterfly to the cocoon, that have limited us to that inner shell, that has made the beauty of the Nigerian youth not to come up, or the beauty of Nigerians as a populace not to come up. Remember, I told you something, that our greatest asset is our youthful population. Inventive minds. Potentials that can be translated into productivity. This remains our greatest asset. So you now find out that we really need to wake up and brace up to some challenges. I will not fault Mr. President's statement, neither will I stand to support his statement. Remember, in the not too distant past, we had the President of the United States of America come up to tell us something and said Africa was, I will not say that for the sake of the camera, you understand? And then a lot of people got up in anger. But when they reflected, look at the things happening around, perhaps Donald Trump could have been truthful. Now that was an awakening. It was an awakening for the populace to rise up to a certain plinth or pedestal. It was an awakening for the populace to say, if the leadership is not doing what ought to be done, then the leadership should be phased out, the leadership should be pushed out.
Okay.
You would also note that presently there is a new political wave. There are lots of young men and women aspiring to leadership positions, from governorship to Senate, House of Reps, and even the president. You have not less than 20 young presidential aspirants. This has never been so. So, whatever way we choose to see it, it is a wake-up call.
So all we are saying, some of these statements are meant to be a good thing in disguise because it's a reawakening.
Well, even if they were not meant to be a good thing in disguise, you see, we need to make the best out of whatever life throws out at us.
Okay.
So if these statements are thrown out, let us pick the grains and sift out the grains and throw them away.
Mr. Bennett, if you were to work with the presidency, for example, and this kind of thing happens, what damage control would you have meted out?
I think the best damage control you can think of is what they're doing right now.
Trying to
Reconstructing the narrative.
even though it's live, people saw it live.
The damage has been done.
Okay.
You can't change a life for what it is. You can't change a life basically for what it is. Best bet is to deflect the lie. Deflect the narrative. Nigerians misunderstood him. That's basically what he should be. And then begin to market Nigerian youth for what they are. Now, the thing I find rather challenging is the president's proclivity to demarcate Nigeria when he is outside Nigeria. I wonder for who, for why, and for how long he's going to continue. Putting down or talking down Nigeria does not help the country after you. It doesn't help the outside world to sympathize with you. The outside world does not sympathize with you. Going out there in London, in New York, wherever it is, to demarcate the country does not open the window for FDI, for foreign direct investment. What it does is to shut it down. And when it closes the window for FDI, it doesn't help your entire economic drive as a government. So I think the handlers of Mr. President have got their job cut out for them, especially ahead of 2019. If indeed he is to run for 2019, they've got to make him understand that the world of 2018 to 2019 is entirely different from the world of 1985. The things you say may not be part of it should be what Nigerians want it to be. Nigerians want to go to school. The youth want a better life. Basically, that's what we do. Now, we cannot do that alone as a country, but to partner with the outside world. And the outside world cannot partner with you when they think that coming from the number one authority in the land, you people are corrupt, you people are full of thieves, your youths are lazy. Come to think of it. Say, for instance, you want to go to a state. Let me say your state, for instance, to set up a business. And the state governor comes to you to tell you that the youths in my state are thieves, they are lazy, they are corrupt. Would you do that?
Maybe the program I was going for was for the youth.
Was directed at the youth. Because if you check the Nigerian demography as it were, the youth form the larger bulk of the demography. So if you are coming, as an investor, you are coming down to Nigeria to invest, what comes to your mind readily is the population that will drive your investment. And if this population is not hardworking as it were, if there is an instant law in place that suggests that you must employ a given percentage of this population, what you readily begin to think of is what happens to your investment. So I think going forward, the handlers of Mr. President should tell him to tone down. It's time to tone down, except of course he's not looking beyond 2019.
Well, like you did mention, and both of you have rightly said, like you said, Nigerian youths are very enterprising, and so far, if you travel all over the world, how do you think world leaders perceive Mr. President when some of them have encountered very hardworking and big-time Nigerians who are doing very, very well in every sphere of their business and all the things that they do? And you see, they know those people, And then I hear the president of the country, or some of these people they have worked with. You remember Donald Trump even had a Nigerian on his economic team.
Sure.
You understand? Then you go and demarket the youth like that. And these young people are listening to you. How do you think they see the president?
Well, the truth is, facts are facts. Like they say, the taste of pudding is in the eating. Nigerians have excelled globally. We mentioned not a few here. In sciences and arts, in the movie industry, even in Hollywood. You have them, inventors, innovators, and so on and so forth. In fact, I'll say we even excelled much more than other nationals when you put us on an equal or level plate. Because when they come from their countries to our country, we give them an easier access. We give them incentives, we give them support and all of that, and then ride to victory to excel. When we go to their country, from the point of immigration, they set barriers against us. And irrespective of those barriers, we have come to conquer, we have come to succeed, we have come to prove the mettle of what we are. Now, definitely what remains to be seen is that the government is still missing certain steps. So a leader like President Donald Trump of America, a leader from Russia, a leader from France, a leader from all the developed countries, will only see that there are still some things missing. And now the fault does not lie entirely with the youth. You see, if you look at children who want to walk, first, the child shows the signals, he begins to crawl. After a while, when he crawls and he sees that other humans walk on 2 feet, the child tries to stand and walk. You understand? And one of the parts of that attempt to walk is that the child lifts up his hand. In Nigeria, I can tell you that the youth are always lifting up their hand. We are ready to walk. But if the other part is not complete, the circle is not complete, you lift up your hand and there is no synergy on the other part to hold the hand appropriately and lead you to walk, then something is wrong. Okay. I keep giving an analogy. Back then, when mobile phone technology came into Nigeria, you know, we had firms like Nokia, we had Sony Ericsson, we had Motorola, Sajem,
Philips, and all that.
They came from the United States, they came from UK, they came from Finland, they came from Hungary. You understand? We didn't have anyone coming from China. Then finally, Chinese came and they brought their own.
Which was Samsung.
No, before Samsung was Korea. You understand? Not even China. When China brought their phones, you saw them, they were shining like these transistor radios with very big speakers. You could hear them ringing from there. It was an embarrassment to hold a phone that was made in China. The battery life was so poor, you could not use the phone for up to an hour before it ran down. They had so many apps and so on and so forth that made their phones incongruent with technological realities. Okay. But they began to evolve over time. They got support from their government, and this support they got from their government made the citizenry to be motivated and to continue. Today, if I check amongst the 3 of us here, maybe 2 of us are using phones that if you check through, they are made in China, if not the 3 of us. Techno phones are made in China.
It's not even all. Sometimes you see even the components, even if it's not a Chinese phone.
Yes.
Like some of the components are inside that phone.
Come from China. And now today we can see that China speaks even when the United States speaks. But what about Nigeria? So what we need to do is for a motivation for the populace, for the motivation for the youth. I understand that Mr. President is pained, Mr. President is frustrated. Mr. President spoke on the plane or from a standpoint of patriotism. This is what I desire for Nigerian youth. I want to see them actualize their potentials. But then, Mr. President needs some introspection to look. As much as I have a powerhouse of good intentions, how can I transmit all of these good intentions so generated and meet up with these Nigerian youth who have potentials undoubted and convert their potential to productivity? The Minister of Youth really needs to sit up. the special assistant to the president or youth and student matters really needs to sit on. There are youth in the hinterlands, in the countryside. There are youth everywhere. You can come up, look at things as simple as toys. You want to buy a toy for your child today. What is the toy made of? Some of them are made of plastic. Some of them are made of metal. But the vast majority of plastic and all of these things that we have all around us. You don't pick up some plastic, do something, couple them up together, and then a young child has a toy to play with. And then a Nigerian youth somewhere is employed. You could make plastics that fly, small toy planes, small toy trains, small toy anything. But all of these things come from China. Where is that motivation of the Nigerian youth? How much has the special assistant to the president done in harnessing this? We need to have a bank of ideas. Because let me tell you something. No matter how much oil we want, let's say we are looking to our oil world. You understand? Apart from oil, we have other things. We have gold in Nigeria, we have iron ore, we have a lot of other minerals, and we even have fertile lands. You can cultivate from yam to beans, rice, and everything that you need for food self-sufficiency. We have all the things. We can even pick just one and survive on it. We can pick just oil, make the way. Pick just this, but when all of these are gone, what are we left with? We are left with you and I. And what is in you and I is that idea that can make the world a greater place. It was this idea that made Britain to conquer a greater part of Africa. And it is still this idea that makes the world superpowers rule over our nations that have not woken up to their ideas.
You know,
that's what we should do.
As part of efforts to reposition the Nigerian youth, what the government should begin to think of is best way to partner stakeholders to create an economic and industrial hub in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country.
Perfect.
You understand what I mean? We need to create a place where we could change the focus of our youth away from oil, away from government job. The worst thing I've ever done in my life is doing a white-collar job. It pains me on a daily basis. Or again, where you have little opportunities to contend with, you fall on what you have as a first step. So first thing first is the Minister of Youth and what do you call it? Youth and Development?
Youth and Sports
Youth and Sports
Development. Whatever has to do with economic development, youth empowerment, even the minister in charge of commerce, in charge of whatever, the relevant arms of government need to come together and think of the best possible way to set up economic and industrial hub in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. This way, the youth from the southeast does not necessarily have to travel down to perhaps the southwest, perhaps the north, to seek for employment. Now, the good side of it is this: where you have these zones, these hubs, it creates avenue for technological advancement.
Okay.
It creates avenue for micro companies, or whatever I call it, the blue chip companies to rise. It creates a whole, there you have agricultural integration with other aspects of the economy. There you have technological integration with other aspects of the economy. We don't necessarily have to import most of the things we import today. All we need to do is to wear our thinking cap.
Okay, wear our thinking cap is what we need to do. We'll go on a short break. When we come back from the break, we'll look at Mark Zuckerberg came to Nigeria. And when he came, he met with the youths. And he came with some innovative ideas. Don't you think our government should harness that, tap into it, and see how they can partner with such a youth who has really excelled in especially with the Facebook, for example, and he's still buying into other bigger companies, joining them into Facebook. Partnering with such will really help Nigeria. Don't you all think? But we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. So don't go anywhere. The real campaign continues after this.
Academy. Enjoy a conducive and serene learning environment. qualified and experienced teachers, equipped computer laboratory and library, secured atmosphere, extracurricular activities, an all-embracing curriculum for total development of the child, comprehensive education for leadership. Join us today from crèche to secondary levels. Leading Treasures Academy, committed to excellence. For almost a decade, the Nigerian army have given their all to ensure that our dear country is not overrun by Boko Haram insurgents. Some have in the process paid the ultimate price, while many will forever live with indelible scars occasioned by their determination to protect the country, no matter the hurdle. Despite these, they have remained resolute and undaunted, and today, all territories the insurgents once took control of have been recaptured and normalcy restored. And now, for the first time in a long time, the end of Boko Haram is foreseeable. Therefore, the wisest thing for the remaining insurgents to do is to surrender today or face total destruction from the army. Remember, the Nigerian army will stop at nothing to ensure that total peace is restored in all parts of the country. So, be wise and embrace peace today or get ready to be ruthlessly dealt with. This message is brought to you by the Coalition on Conflict Resolution and Human Rights in Nigeria.
Welcome back to the program, The Real Campaign, here on Television Nigerian. I know so many of you have questions you want to ask. Just keep sending your comments, send your questions. We'll get to read them. Don't worry. But before we went on the break, I just mentioned something that happened sometime last year, or was it this year? Mark Zuckerberg visited Nigeria, and he didn't come to see the government. He went straight to this. There's a hub in Yaba in Lagos called the Andela up where young Nigerians go there. They manufacture chips, softwares, hardwares, and all that. But nobody even knew about that until a foreigner needed to come into this country to point that, look, Nigeria already has this kind of potential. You understand? So, like we were saying before now, should we even be looking towards the government for everything? Is there any way we can de-emphasize the youth from the government and see how we can get investors come in, work with this youth, and then produce things out of it?
Well, I want to say that that's a very good point. And you see, for Mark Zuckerberg to have come into Nigeria, it shows you that he believes in the potential of Nigeria.
But they are not lazy.
That they're not lazy, they're hardworking, they're enterprising, but beyond anything, they are innovative and inventive. And you know, and that was that point that made him come. And if we want to look at Mark Zuckerberg, we will also see that he possesses a lesson, not just for the Nigerian youth, but for Nigeria as a nation. If we have gotten it wrong up to a certain extent, should we continue on the wrong path? The clear answer is no. How can we translate our pains to gains? How can we translate our backwardness or retardations from those points to advancement? Remember, recently Mark Zuckerberg was in the eye of the storm. And of course, he should have easily been sunken, engulfed, or swallowed by that storm, because it was something of monumental proportion. But when Mark Zuckerberg came before Congress, the manner in which he handled that challenge turned into a profiting for himself. That is how it should be for Nigeria. Now to the point where we are, should we be looking at government or should we de-emphasize government? You have answered the question in itself, and yet there is still a question in that answer. in the fact that, one, for those youth in the Hamdallah hub, and for others in whatever hubs they have found themselves, you have some GSM villages, you have some other ventures put together. They are making their modest effort. But you see, there is an essence of government. The essence of government is to do what citizens cannot do on their own. To identify felt needs that can amplify, when solved, the effort, the positive, patriotic, national development and gender effort of the citizenry. In that Hamdallah hub now, you ask yourself, do they have access to stable power? If they do not have access to stable power, you should know ordinarily that power supply is going to be eating into their profit, is going to also be eating into the ease of doing business in that hub. You should ask yourself, what is the extent of accessibility of that hub, of that technological hub? Do they have good roads? What is the traffic situation? And then, now, putting it or picking it up, like my good brother here has stated, you know, we need to have industrial hubs across Nigeria, you understand? And these industrial hubs should be tailored along the lines of comparative advantage of each region or the respective regions of our country. Now, for instance, if you have an industrial hub that has focused on agriculture, as an instance, they focus on food production or food production or whatever production they choose to focus on, and they've produced so well, they've motivated themselves. They need to process and need power, for an instance, and they don't have power supply. How do they generate to ensure that there is stable power supply? So these are all issues. Government, but in the same way, to emphasize government. They need to that stage. I still want to go back to the analogy of the child learning to walk. You lift your hands and then the child picks you up. There's an extent to which you can lift your hands. If you lift your hand and there is no one to pick you up, you might fall on your butt or you might fall with your head, and then injuries come up. At the end, you discover your father scampering here and there to treat you, if that's the caring father, or if there is no caring father or mother around, a permanent life injury. Then we now go back to the circle of pains and circle of frustration and disenchantment. We need to find a tangent of hope.
Bennett?
I sincerely agree with you. Government need to come in at a point. But I don't like to look at government from the standpoint of whether the state or the federal government taking up the responsibility of infrastructural development alone. I like to look at it from the standpoint of the public-private partnership.
Okay.
Because I see it as a very strong way to develop infrastructure quickly. Over time, the problem we are having today in Nigeria did not start today. It started, of course, right from the days of the military, when certain sections of the country abandoned to their fates, while other sections of the country are developed. Roads are built, schools are built, sometimes to an unfortunate extent where these facilities are set up, these infrastructures are set up, yet the manpower, because it is, on the one hand, it is one thing to build infrastructure, it is another thing to have the human capacity to manage this infrastructure. So I like to look at it from the standpoint of a PPP, where the government partners private institutions to develop these infrastructures. I would also like to ask that the law regulating power generation, electricity generation in Nigeria, electricity distribution and supply has to be revisited. Because at the moment, it puts everything more or less in the hands of government, except of course for the recent deregulation of the power sector. But the state government needs to be given the power to generate, distribute and supply electricity within certain permitted parameters, within their state of course. Whatever excess is left should be supplied to the national grid. acceptable. Now, that way, states run to the center for, what do you call it?
Monthly.
For monthly
allocation.
allowance, not allocation. For monthly allocation. So what they end up doing is resting on their house, waiting for the next month to come. And that is why you have state governors using the resources for their state for personal gains. Okay. Now, if the states have this window I'm advocating, it makes it easy for people at the state levels to call their representatives to order, to demand, and that brings me to this point. Time and after, I have insisted, instead of having the Nigerian Governors Forum, where they discuss the politics of today and the politics of tomorrow, let's have regional forums where governors could meet with other stakeholders, with money banks from that region, with captains of industries from that region, with other stakeholders, and decide, even at state level, ask themselves, how do we develop our states? If you ask me today, the best governor in circulation currently is the Lagos State governor. And that because he's working on a practical blueprint to develop Lagos State. So we don't wake up tomorrow, maybe 2, 5, 10 years from today, and call the Nigerian youth lazy. There is a need to revisit legislations guiding certain sectors of the economy. Like I said, power, transportation, even policing. There is a need to revisit it because there is a sense in grassroots development. That is how we get out of this mess.
All right, 2019 is around the corner, and obviously the president will need the youth to galvanize people and then vote and all. Do you see the youth supporting the president contributing to statements like this?
You see, they say the wood insect that gathers sticks will carry it on its own head. Already, irrespective of the damage control that is being undertaken by Mr. President's media team, there has been a backlash from Nigerian youth. And of course, opposition parties have easily latched in on that. You understand? So already, the wood insect of 2019 in Mr. President's case has gathered some sticks that are going to be very weighty for Mr. President to carry. And in this respect, if we are judging by the present now, it can easily be used as a campaign against him. He might not lose all the youth because there are some out there to support him, but of course a great number will be lost. Now, between now and when we go to the polls, you understand? There is still a lot that can be done
to remedy the situation.
Yes, not just even remedying the situation, to come to terms with what we have, harness what we have, and do what we can with what we have. You see, I will applaud Mr. President to an extent for making such a remark, because he expressed what he felt. He expressed what he felt. I have my own opinion. And as Mr. President, if this is what you feel, we are all under Mr. President in this country. He has constitutional powers to correct ills that have been identified. If you see that Nigerian youth are uneducated, what measures have been put in place by government? If Nigerian youth are lazy, if they are not enterprising enough, what measures have been put by government? Has the government done that much? And Nigerians say, no, we don't want to be educated. No, we don't want to be, if today as we are today, people do anything just to attain education. Several others even go outside the country to get quality education. You understand? And within the country, people are striving and struggling to get quality education. Now, what should Mr. President do in the build-up to 2019? If he wants to use this as a point, or if he wants to use this as a leeway to have easier victory. Identify the potentials of this youth. Look at the areas where you feel they are lacking. Bring them together, harness them, and then translate them into something. Build these industrial hubs everywhere. You understand? Forge the public-private partnership. And then when we talk about this public-private partnership, you see, PPPs cannot work without the government. Because, like he rightly stated, everything is hinged on legislations. So it is the government that is in charge of legislations. So no matter how well a PPP arrangement is put, if the first P, which is public, is not on its part well harnessed or well fashioned out, then the second P and the last P, which is the partnership, will collapse like a child's sandcastle. So the government, everything stops at the bottom of the government. So Mr. President should rise up, assemble his team. He should brush it up. If the Minister of Youth, Lalong, is not Solomon Dalong, if he's not doing his work properly, let him be shown the way out. You understand? Because the country, Nigeria, is greater than any individual. We know Mr. President is a patriot, and if he knows that he cannot even handle the nation, I know Mr. President he will even resign now, and he may not even contest in 2019. So, following that line of patriotism and the vision for a greater Nigeria, anything that stands in the way should be shoved aside, should be crushed away, should be pushed away. The senior special assistant to the president, I want to state without equivocation that he has not lived up to the billing of his office. He has not been going to the rural area to engage with the youth. He has not even been engaging with the youth, even in the cities, even online and everywhere. You don't have robust engagement. And you see, Facebook has made it easy for us. And Facebook is an invention of one young man, like you rightly stated. One young man who did not have the support of government, who just picked up an idea, you understand? And then you have the support of government, you have budget, you have funding, you have everything, you have access to agencies, you have access to ministries, you have access to international donor agencies and so on and so forth. And you see, these are the people that are doing Mr. President a great disservice. Like I stated, Mr. President might have good intentions, but if he is surrounded by people who impede or resist these good intentions from reaching the citizenry, all they can see is that Mr. President does not have anything well for them. So, in the build-up to 2019, and of course, it's all about good governance, whether 2019 or no 2019. Leadership or governance is a continuum. We're talking about the advancement of Nigeria. Whoever is on the seat at the time, I am a patriot. I will support anybody who is on the seat to succeed. And when you're not doing things right, I will make my own modest suggestions, if you call them criticisms or whatever, I will make them, just to see how it can be corrected. They say the crab that ignores the gentle strokes of the water lily will learn a bitter lesson when it collapses or crushes or crashes into a rock. Because before the rocks, you see the soft water lily is warning you. You know that you are approaching something. So these are all warning signs. Mr. President has even warned himself. So having warned himself and the government, it is left to him to begin to identify what are those speckles of debt around. Let us flush them out of the system. Those who are not allowing the dividends of good governance to trickle down to the masses in line with the felt needs of the populace.
With just 10 months to go, don't you think that might be a little too late?
No, I don't think that may be a little too late. I've always insisted that Nigerian politics is peculiar. Anybody who wants to be a governor or a president in Nigeria must understand that, one, the Nigerian electorate is vulnerable to manipulation, vulnerable to fake news, Of course, we saw a lot of that in 2015, you know, vulnerable to propaganda. So you must do everything to watch your steps in your first tenure, as if you have plans for a second tenure. I see a situation where, and I want to suggest this to Mr. President particularly, not even to his handlers. Part of the reason I supported the then President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration is because he came in with technocrats. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was not a PDP member. Charles Olulo had no business in PDP, even though now he's in politics. But to say the least, Obasanjo came in with people he felt will redirect the state of the nation. The immediate past administration of Goodluck Jonathan also did so to an extent. Sadly, the same cannot be said of this government. This government has surrounded itself, if not by party members, then with cronies. And the last time I checked, the worst way to do business, whether government business, personal business, is to surround yourself with cronies. It will crash. They won't tell you the truth to start with. So
they'll make you feel good.
They'll make you feel good. Of course, they are there for their money, not for the passion of it. What Mr. President needs to do is to open his ears and eyes to the happenings around him. Not to what his advisors tell him.
Get true feedback.
You know, get true feedback. In as much as he should listen to his advisors. But in the words of Obasanjo, I listen more outside than I listen to you. I'm paraphrasing him because
I make you, especially advisor, does not mean I will listen to you.
Does not mean I will listen to you. Now, to get to the question proper, I don't think it's late. I think it's never too late to retrace your step, especially in governance. We have a couple of months to election proper. It's now left for the president to begin to sack those who need to be sacked, especially concerning real-time developmental issues.
Okay.
Sack those who need to be sacked. If you must rejig the economy, which I think it needs to be rejigged, whoever is in charge of the economy that brought it to this extent, must show the person the way out. We voted for President Muhammadu Buhari, not for the CBN governor, not for the Minister of Economy, not for any other person.
Okay, we voted for President Buhari and we expect him to do his job as the president of Nigeria. Fire who needs to be fired and rejig the economy. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being part of the program today. I know, Solo, you don't get you will come again. You will come again because we're sure I need you to come on the program.
Beyond that, I want to say that TV Nigeria is doing a great work. And anywhere you see a patriotic work as a patriot, you'll want to be part of it. Put your hands on deck to make it move.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, the Reddit Television Nigeria, we are patriotic. And also, Bennett, it's always good to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Well, you have heard the views of this gentleman, and I believe those who are working in the seat of power close to the president should be able to relate this back to him that, sir, Nigerian youths are not lazy, we are ready to do everything that can make Nigeria better. And sir, please, sack those that are not working. Employ youths to fill up those places, and you will see them excel and make Nigeria great again. That has been our program today on the Rail Campaign here on Television Nigeria. I want to thank you all for being part of the program, and join me again on Monday as we come for a fresh edition next week. But please, this weekend is going to be good for you. Enjoy it, but don't do anything that won't let you watch me on Monday. God bless you.